I watched the ABC for an entire day the other day, and here's what I learned. The movie Event Horizon is a documentary. Channel 2 on your TV is a portal to hell. They even have Sam Neill popping up at unexpected moments, enticing you into a black hole void of government propaganda with hypnotic claims like,
it's incredibly important that we have one source that we can rely on.
yeah, and Sam, the holder of that title is well and truly passed on to win local news. It's a bit telling that the ABC has had to stoop to the level of Fox News and drill into their audience every half hour how fair and balanced they are, minus the cool effects, and because they can't afford legitimately funny hosts like Tucker Carlson, they have to settle for Charlie fucking Pickering. Put him on Hard Chat and ask him why he's the only human being on the planet to have a worse nose than Barbara Streisand. Isn't it a tad peculiar that the ABC's #Yours campaign, the vapid and self-absorbed equivalent of an Instagram model's #humble post, where if it really was the straight shooter of information it purports to be, the slogan directly underneath that would read, yours, you know, in the same way that ASIO's yours. As if it really was my ABC, I'd have put Paul Keating right in the middle of that who's who of middle-aged hipsters with his timeless 80s quote.
It feels like it's part of the fabric of my life.
What it means to be Australian.
The ABC is the most self-indulgent, self-serving outfit in the country. I mean, sorry to sound like a Waleed Ali fan, but nailed it. The biggest mystery in this nation's history is not what happened to Harold Holt or even Toadie's wife Dee. It's how this nation is able to incessantly complain about politicians receiving $200,000 a year for sitting on their bums all day, doing jack shit, which I think is Aussie slang for building the nation. While they seem to be perfectly content with smug, 60-year-old bags of pudding to receive $500,000 of taxpayer money a year, to sit there on their bums and say,
I'll take that as a comment.
once a week, who are only ever interrupted from their all-important service of perpetually wondering,
Who's a racist and a sexist today? Let's look through our glass house and, oh, it's white men as always. No, don't give them a chance to defend themselves. 200 years to do that. Let's just move on to story time. Story time, where we find out that the biggest victim in the world is, no, it's not Javan rhinos, it's me. A woman. In the developed world. Possibly edged out by my friend who I went to an elite private school with, who's quarter Aboriginal and is always referring to herself as part of the Gadigal people. We're the real Thelma and Louise. Part of the sun up to sundown non-stop cacophony of self-obsessed women continually pondering without a trace of irony in succession that, why aren't there more women on television?
coming up on ABC One, we explore why running a business, if and only if you're a woman, is the hardest thing in the world, apart from being a mum, of course, on gender-specific kudos for fuck all. Then later, get ready for an hour and a half of forced... with the comedy special, women can be funny too. In fact, we're funnier than men, okay? You got that? I don't hate men. Men hate me. Fucking men. Sounds hilarious. All part of the ABC's enabled narcissism masquerading as a grotesque bastardization of Feminism Tuesdays. You're gonna mention the privatisation of the domestic violence hotline by the Liberals once, ever, ABC? Classic mansplaining. See, this is why this lineup's so important. Tara Moss's feelings were hurt, you pig. Which brings us to Keating's next critique of the ABC, which is even more pertinent now than it was 30 years ago, and that is that the only thing that ever holds this endless parade of insular mincing sycophants whose only purpose in life appears to be to test whether or not it's humanly possible to be less entertaining than Seth Meyers is...
I think what's essentially important about the ABC is the drive to allow everybody in this country to tell their story.
It's just the place you keep coming back to.
As soon as you talk about the ABC, it's never off AM, PM, the news service, boring everybody stiff about their problems. National treasure. To quote British storage war star Heavy D, this sardine can that is packed to the brim with the most solipsistic groupthink human backwash in the country that'd make John West go, Hamish MacDonald, ugh, that is most certainly not the best. It's such a narcissistic body that they don't see the irony in when the Liberals defunded the CSIRO and their response was essentially, oh, who needs scientists? Probably not enough of them were women anyway! or when the Liberals attack the unions with a bogus Royal Commission.
I think we can instigate a year-long witch hunt. In fact, we can even invent the pretext for the Royal Commission in the first place. Our slogan's always been the voice of all Australians except for workers, so about 5% of Australians, we're the solo can of news.
Or the Liberals gutting Labor's climate policy initiatives, and their response was,
We try and hack why most pollies don't care about climate change.
sourced to counter the fact that under the Labor Party we were heading towards a 15% reduction in carbon emissions by 2020, while under the Liberals we're set to be increasing them, you degenerative ingrate.
Well, I suppose it's a glass half full situation. It depends on how you look at it.
Oh, the ABC is perfectly happy to throw every other institution in the country under the bus in exchange for a paycheck, but as soon as there's even a whisper of these pickle ricks that have been fermented in Chardonnay having their own funding cut.
This is an emergency broadcast. The ABC is under a full-scale attack. Can no longer afford Himalayan pink salt. Repeat, can no longer afford Himalayan pink salt.
Good! You don't deserve slightly better tasting salt. You provide no public service.
That's not true. Sometimes we file rural reports. Not me, personally, though. I film a book club with my friends.
Right, so when you strip away all the worthless cunts who think that cocaine is a substitute for reading, you're essentially left with Sean McAuliffe and reports on the price of wheat. You don't need $1 billion a year for that.
Well, it's just, are the cameras off? It's part of a deliberate strategy by the Liberal Party to make the ABC purposefully bad so the public supports its privatisation.
Well, to quote the show that you repeat, 8 times a day?
Yeah, I know.
And you're what's left after they made it purposefully bad. Meaning you're bad. You're the talentless opportunist the Liberal state ABC board deemed acceptable to read off of disinformation-filled teleprompters post the purge because you're little agreeable yes men, people, as you fit the only 2 qualifications you need to have to be a host on the ABC anymore, which is that 1, you perpetually have this facial expression, and 2, you're either unaware or you're proud of the fact that you're a cog. You're a lesbian haircut cog that's part of a much larger propaganda machine which packages the same core agenda recalibrated to different markets that are organised around generic identities. The Murdoch press sewing up that shit kicker suburb vote of
The only thing holding back this country from being 10 out of 10 is foreign aid.
Then you've got that Fairfax/9 News demo, which is for people with Alzheimer's who look at Peter Overton every night and think,
Oh, Brian Henderson must be off tonight.
Then you've got SBS who soaks up that bratty pigworm offspring of immigrants vote who pined that
I wish my parents didn't sacrifice everything they had to leave India. I'd rather be a minority Muslim under Modi than have to live under the shadow of racism in this country that is cast by our poo.
And finally you have the ABC, who hits that androgynous middle-class wet noodle market who are responsible for the decline of the Roman Empire as they have both an inferiority and superiority complex firing off in their Uber Eats clogged bodies at the same time, stemming from
Mum told me my entire childhood that I was the best person on earth, but I was also forced to watch rabbit-proof fence in Year 9. I'm an incredibly special ethno-masochist and it's everyone's fault but mine.
and they all work in synchrony to deliver the Liberal Party undeserved electoral victories. This is why the Liberals would never actually privatise the ABC. It serves an incredibly important function for them, as you probably think,
Ha! This guy doesn't think the ABC supports Labour? What a Muslim communist.
but that's exactly why the ABC and SBS are so effective. Because in contrast to Channel 9 and News Corp's blatant cheering of the Liberals, where they straight up barrack for them like they're the Collingwood Magpies, anything more subtle than
Come on, Liberals, come on! Come on!
appears by comparison to be anti-liberal. That is the genius of this propaganda machine. In third world dictatorships, it doesn't matter if every channel is saying,
This just in, Saddam Hussein flew to moon today and burned the American flag.
because the ruling elite there have secret police and the cleaning product ethno-cleanse to weed out opposition. But thankfully, in Western democracies, you need to have a more sophisticated form of news where there's different outlets that have superficially different slants but push the same agenda, which is to elect a party that represents essentially no one except for the constituency of Gina Reinhardt, but is in power 70% of the time. And so the ABC and SBS have license to be mildly critical of the Liberals. It suits the Liberals to have them cover non-vote shifting scandals like Barnaby's saucy secretary and what they think about African gangs in Melbourne. As long as they're hurling greater and more damaging amounts of mud at Labor, as the ABC's role is not to channel votes into the Liberals like News Corp and Channel 9's is, the ABC's function is to soak up the natural support base of the Labor Party and make it despondent. They employ a myriad of tricks to achieve this that also feed into their mirage of neutrality, such as
We give the Liberal and the Labor Party equal airtime.
to debate issues that if you were remotely educated on them, you would know are not up for debate. It's like saying,
Brett Lee versus this 100-year-old Japanese man who will be joining us via satellite from Tokyo and has never set foot in Australia. And the subject is wheat peaks don't exist. Morimoto, your thoughts?
but by getting a Labour and Liberal politician to fight for 6 minutes of airtime like it's oxygen in a sinking submarine.
Well, if I could just finish my point and then you
rubbish.
can respond to
Rubbish.
that.
Well, you're reading estimates from 2013, mate. You might as well be reading them from 1997. You don't even know what's on. Well, finish it. What is it?
Now you're
I'm not
talking
interrupting
about
you.
time. That'll be $500,000, Australia.
To confuse the audience into thinking that there is a legitimate debate on NDIS funding, Gonski, economic management, climate policy, healthcare, thus softening Labour's support base. They also cap Labour at a grassroots level by incessantly attacking unions on trumped-up charges, which weakens their membership and thus handicaps Labour come election time. While also, and this is the ABC classic, in order to keep up this charade of neutrality, which let's be perfectly clear about this, objective reality and neutrality are not the same thing. Neutrality is like when you go to a kid's party and there's one mum at the end of Pin the Tail on the Donkey that says,
Yay, you're all winners.
but there's not. There's a clear winner. That's being neutral. And to remain neutral, the ABC gives free pass after free pass to blatant corruption and corporate favouritism of the Liberal Party, while giving unnecessary scrutiny to the comparatively minor infringements of the Labor Party. Sam Dastyari is a perfect example.
To extremely old news now, and just a reminder, Sam Dastyari did take a few $1,000s from Chinese developers.
You gonna explain to your audience, ABC, that the Liberal Party as an entity accepts millions of dollars from Chinese donors?
No, because that would make the Liberal Party look much, much worse, and that's not very neutral, is it?
If you don't believe me, watch the 7:30 report for a week and tell me how many stories they put to air that you'd like if you were Bill Shorten versus how many stories they put to air that you'd like if you were Scott Morrison, because to me the ratio appears to be about the same as Channel 9's, 20-1. So, in conclusion...
Oh, Philip Adams is still on air. That's it. Privatised now.
No, I understand that the ABC is better than a fully corporatised news environment. Marginally. By a few hairs. I also get that publicly funded news, in theory, is beneficial.
In theory, communism works. In theory.
But that would require Bill Shorten marching into Ultimo with a paintball gun a la Ari Goldman from Entourage and firing at every curly-haired annual membership to the Opera House brown noser quivering behind a hot desk.
I said nice things about you off camera, Bill!
But after almost 20 years of systematic entrenchment, I don't think that's going to happen. So,
We'll build a new news service. A better news service. One that talks mostly about a kid that I went to high school with. ABC doesn't do that.
I know you don't think you need to pay for information.
When you already do.
Classic faux self-deprecation Q&A joke. Take that as a comment.
But that's the way of the world, unfortunately, and I may not be perfect.
Except in aesthetics.
But at least unlike the rest of the media in this country, I'm not actively campaigning to get a party elected that represents no one except for casinos and tiddlywinks. And I'm having success. This channel is the reason that youth voter registration increased by 20% last election. This channel is the reason that thousands of Australians have joined their unions, green groups, switched to an industry super fund, switched to credit unions. And it is this channel that offers a far more empowering national narrative to the youth of Australia than the ABC and SBS has concocted by childless 60-year-olds distractionary garbage of
Racism, sexism, both major parties are fucked. Ooh, anti-establishment, how cool is that? Fragmenting the natural support base of the only effective agency of government in the country. Yeah,
fuck you soulless coke addicts who think you're good people by default of the fact that you live in Adam Bandt's electorate. You nepotistic clogs are nothing more than shadows on an ever-shrinking cave as you become more and more, sing it Rice Gum, irrelevant. We live in an age where we can wrestle back government on our own accord, but as Biggie Smalls put it best,
more money, more problem.
For the lips.
the more money I have, the more people I can hire to pump out more videos, the more chance the few thousand stoners we need in marginal seats to watch one of these videos will, who hilariously hold the fate of the world in their hands like they do their bongs because...
Wow. If I wasn't on the dole and spending all my time on YouTube, I would have never have seen this. I always thought it was a cliche, but it looks like marijuana really can save the world.
Those are the big take-homes of this video. 1, give me money. 2, share these videos around, especially with stoners in marginal seats.
Share this with me.
No, you already know this exists. Share this with stoners who don't know it exists.
How do you know what I was thinking, man?
Please share and comment below. Comment!
Sempre misero que a essa vida que
kiss